One day on the 26th of August 1979, a family was exploring and searching for arrowheads in a remote buffalo cave near Du Bois, Idaho, but it was during their exploration in which they would discover something terrifying. While cave searching, they stumbled upon a burlap sack that was buried in a shallow grave. Upon opening it up, a headless torso would be spotted. With this, local authorities were informed about the chilling discovery, and so a forensic team was called on to investigate. But of course, with only a torso to base their inspection, they unfortunately couldn't do that much. Because of this, it was deemed a cold case, but this was changed 12 years later on the 30th of March 1991. In that same cave, a girl was also exploring, and while she was walking through the cave, she discovered a mummified hand. Once again, an investigation on the cave occurred, and as it turned out, an arm and two legs were also found wrapped in a burlap sack similar to the first discovery. Now that investigators had more body parts to work with, they wanted to make sure they could find the unknown person's identity, and so they turned to anthropology graduate students and staff members from Idaho State University to help with the case. They assisted by going to the cave and using a scanning device to make a 3D map of the entire cave. On top of this, experts from the FBI and the Smithsonian Institution were called on to assist as well. After further examination, some new features of the person were brought into light. The research revealed that the victim was a man likely part of European descent, may have had reddish brown hair, possibly around the age of 40 years old during the time of his death, and that his post-mortem interval was estimated to be between 6 months to 10 years. The cause of his death was still unknown at this point, however it was mentioned that his body was dismembered by various sharp objects. Many years after these new pieces of information were released, nothing new had popped up, and so the same students and staff members from Idaho State University collaborated with the DNA Dope Project in 2019, in which they finally identified the unknown victim. The DNA used consisted of a piece of his tibia, and to the researchers' surprise, the DNA used was considered high quality, likely due to his body being reserved in the volcanic caves for a while. It should also be mentioned that his clothes were still in decent condition, and this would heavily favor investigators. Soon after, a profile was made for the man to numerous DNA databases, and while some of these matches were made regarding family trees and other relatives, it was this specific piece of media that finally helped identify the man. A wanted poster from his last escape featured the same clothing in the description as the one he was wearing when first discovered. After looking through more databases and his family tree, the unknown man's 87-year-old grandson was called in order to take a DNA test to confirm that the remains belonged to his grandfather, and as expected, it was a perfect match. The man was identified to be Joseph Henry Loveless. Loveless was born on the 3rd of December 1870 in Payson, Utah Territory. But here's the thing, even though they figured this out, investigators thought this was strange. You see, looking back at the wanted poster, it reveals that the arrest warrant was for Walt Currens. But as it turned out, Walt Currens and Joseph Henry Loveless were the same person. After a background check, it was revealed that the man was actually a murderer and a bootlegger who used multiple aliases to protect his identity. In August of 1905, Loveless married a woman named Agnes Octavia Caldwell. In March and December of 1914, Loveless was arrested for bootlegging, but would commonly find his way in and out of jail as he would often escape. Strangely enough, on the 5th of May 1916, Agnes Loveless was murdered with an axe by a man named Charles Smith, who was described by news sources as her husband at the time. Just 6 days later, on the 11th, the murderer was revealed. However, he wasn't named Charles Smith. Instead, he was arrested under the name Walter Currens. Now here's when things just get a little bit stranger. It was reported that during Agnes's funeral, one of her children stated this: "Papa never stayed in jail very long, and he'll soon be out." And they were right, as just another several days later, a man named Walter Currens escaped from jail by sawing through the bars. As it turned out, he had a small saw in his shoe, and so he used that to escape. After all of this, the police started to notice a pattern, and then they came to the conclusion that Charles Smith, Walter Currens, and Henry Loveless were all the same man. So with all of that out of the way, this brings us back to Joseph Henry Loveless. While there's no confirmed cause of death, it's believed that he died shortly after his escape in May of 1916 at the age of 46. On the 23rd of July, 1991, a navy blue cooler was found alongside the Henry Hudson Parkway. Upon opening up the cooler, a devastating discovery was made. Inside the cooler was a body of a malnourished child that was tied up with rope and Venetian blind cord, placed in a fetal position, wrapped in a garbage bag, and was filled with soda cans and water bottles. When authorities investigated the incident, they named the child Baby Hope. Examiners were able to identify some of the child's features, such as having dark wavy hair in a ponytail, weighing only 28 pounds, possibly Hispanic, between the ages of 3 to 5 years old, a victim of sexual abuse, and had just died a few days prior before being discovered. The New York Police Department had kept the child's body in a city morgue for 2 years, until they provided the money to have the victim buried after a public funeral was held, in which around 400 to 500 people showed up. Many were mourning the death of the young victim, and those curious about the case demanded answers as to what could have ever happened to her, and so the investigation was in full effect. After the body was found, an eyewitness explained that while she was driving around the area, she had seen both a Hispanic man and woman who were both described as well dressed, and on top of this, they were carrying a cooler in the location where the body was found around the time the girl was believed to have been killed. However, despite this tip, no clear evidence was ever presented for the first few years of the child's death. And so, as an attempt to gain some information about the child's DNA, Baby Hope's body was exhumed both in 2006 and 2011, with the case once again opening up in 2013, as an attempt to get any more information from the public. At this point, there was a record of about 250 tips regarding Baby Hope, and the New York Police Department had received over 400 calls from people claiming that they knew who the baby was or had some sort of connection. However, these calls would usually never lead to anything viable. This is because one of the detectives involved in the case, Jerry Giorgio, explained that over 100 calls didn't even make it to the tips book, as these callers would refer to themselves as psychics. He explained that these people said they had visions but not any names, which of course doesn't really help with the case at all. It even got to the point where Jerry Giorgio was going to local schools and asking the kids to write a few words down if they had noticed any fellow classmates or friends that they haven't seen for a while. But unfortunately, this wasn't successful. But as it turned out, reopening up the case would provide the authorities with the answers they desperately needed. Another anonymous person came forward and explained that she was washing her clothing in a local laundromat a couple years ago and overheard a woman talking about the Baby Hope case and saying she believed her mother was Baby Hope's mother. The anonymous person stated that they didn't want to come forward right away because they assumed it was a cold case, but as soon as the case reopened, they believed it was the right time. After years of managing to track down the woman that was mentioned in the laundromat, she was later found and identified to be the older sister of Baby Hope. Her name is Lorena Ramirez. When she was asked about her younger sister, she told detectives that when she was younger, she reunited with her other sister named Maribel. Maribel explained what happened to Baby Hope. However, she couldn't say her name, as she didn't actually remember it. After explaining how she was killed, Maribel said how she saw her sister being stuffed in a bag and then being put in a cooler, adding on that during the night of the killing, she heard other adults in the room arguing and starting to panic as they couldn't get Baby Hope into the cooler. After talking to Lorena, they managed to get in contact and locate the mother of Baby Hope. As it turned out, she didn't live that far as she was living in Queens, New York, and after identifying her, she revealed herself as Anjelica Castillo. Here's where it became a problem though. At first, it was difficult for authorities to even speak to Margarita in the first place, as she assumed that they wanted to talk to her about her legal status, and so she refused to talk to them. They were sure she was the mother of Baby Hope, but she didn't allow a DNA test. After a few months, detectives were able to get an envelope that Margarita had licked, and to their luck, they were able to get her DNA. After they got it, they met up with her again and showed her a picture of her younger daughter. And with that, she then felt a little bit more comfortable to discuss with them. Anjelica Castillo explained that in 1991, her husband and herself had a huge fight. Because of this, Margarita left the home and took the daughters. Her husband obviously wasn't too fond of this, and he demanded that he get to see them. He told her to bring them to his niece's place and that they would take care of them. Margarita agreed. However, after staying with them for a while, she said that she wanted to go back home with her daughters. But this didn't end well, as her husband said that they were going to stay with him in Balvina. Balvina was Margarita's paternal cousin, however she didn't really know too much about her, and she felt quite uncomfortable of her taking care of her daughters. This caused another argument, and after speaking for a while, Margarita gave up and just allowed her daughters to stay there. As time went on, she went to go visit them again. This time, however, she noticed that only Balvina was with them, and so when she asked where her husband was, Balvina explained that she didn't know, and that they would have to stay with her in case he came back and he noticed that they were gone. Time had passed by and Margarita would receive a phone call from an unsuspecting person. She got a call from one of Balvina's friends, and she said that she had passed away due to a stroke. At this point, Margarita was like, alright, well, since Balvina's gone, there's no one that can actually take care of my daughters, so I'll go pick them up. But as she was about to go pick them up, Balvina's friend stated that there was only one daughter. She later learned that her husband had fled off to Mexico and left the young girls with Balvina before she passed away. Now, as suspected, the investigators really started to question Margarita and her husband's true intentions. Margarita's husband was identified as Gennaro Ramirez, however, he was never found. Even though her husband couldn't be found, the authorities started to question why Margarita didn't contact them earlier about her missing daughters. She explained that she hesitated because she believed that her husband would do something to her since he was described as being abusive, and she admitted that it would be tough to talk to the officers due to the language barrier and was scared that she would get deported, and so she didn't even bother at the time. Margarita was also questioned about her other family members. Of course, we already talked about Balvina, but there was another person we haven't talked about. His name is Conrado Juarez. To her surprise, Conrado was living with Balvina while she was taking care of her daughters. As previously mentioned, it was originally believed that he left with his daughters to go back to their home country, Mexico, but instead, he left them all in New York with Balvina and Conrado. After finding Conrado at his job as a dishwasher who worked in the Bronx, he was brought in for interrogation. It was later confirmed that the daughter's name was Anjelica Castillo. After being heavily questioned about Anjelica, he admitted to murdering her. As he explained, he went back to his apartment after being drunk one late night. Once he saw Anjelica in the hallway, he called her over to his room, but then he did the unthinkable. He said that he smothered her with a pillow and began to. When Anjelica was no longer responding or moving, Conrado called Balvina for her assistance. Balvina then came up with the idea to get rid of the body, and she even provided a cooler. Conrado followed through and folded Anjelica in half, tied her and then placed her in a garbage bag, and then placed soda cans and bottles on top of her body that were meant to ice her body down. Both Conrado and Balvina then took a cab to the park, dropped off the cooler, and left like nothing horrible had just happened. But as soon as he went into court, he claimed that his confession was coerced, and instead provided a different explanation. This of course didn't go as planned, and Conrado Juarez would be charged with second-degree murder. He would be placed in Rikers Island jail under protective custody. However, his sentence would be short-lived, as Conrado Juarez would pass away in jail on the 18th of November 2018 from pancreatic cancer. Now, with this case being so heavily talked about, and with many believing that Margarita had failed to protect her daughter, there was one moment in an interview that left many to believe that Margarita simply didn't care about the death of her daughter. In the interview, she mentioned that she had met up with Conrado as he wanted her to pay up for taking care of her daughters. She insisted that she see them first, but Conrado explained to her that Anjelica had passed away by falling down a flight of stairs, and that he would give her more details another day. Margarita left, and as days went by, she kept calling Conrado, but he would never answer. Even with all this information, Margarita never contacted the authorities because, as I stated before, she was scared of the consequences. Margarita had known about her daughter's death, but never came forward, with many believing that there was something going on behind the scenes that we never knew about Margarita. On the 3rd of June 1991, between 9:30 and 11 p.m., a local truck driver named Eduardo Collin arrived at a Super 8 motel in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He rented a room for 2 people that night, and it was expected that he would check out just the next day before 11 a.m. After registering, Eduardo was given room number 233. Just 2 short days after, on June 5th, it was noticed that Eduardo hadn't checked out of his room. And strangely enough, no one had saw the man leave his room during his stay. Because of this, Eduardo's room was checked, but things took a dark turn. When attempting to open the door, it was noted that the door was locked from the inside, and so a screwdriver was needed to get inside. When it was finally opened, an unknown woman was found hanging from the shower by a suitcase strap and could be seen in the bathroom with her body being severely decomposed. While the entire room was being investigated, a photograph of a man and a woman was seen. The man in the photograph was later identified as Eduardo by the employee who checked him in. The thing is, no one knew the location of where the photo booth picture was taken and when it was even taken in the first place. It would just take a few years for Eduardo's family to be identified, and when they were questioned about Eduardo's whereabouts, they stated that he died due to natural causes, and when they were shown the picture of the man and the woman, they stated that that wasn't Eduardo and that they didn't know who the woman was. Another piece of evidence found on the room's table was a scale that had the name George Martinez written on it. Sadly, there's little to no information surrounding who the woman was. As of March 2021, investigators revealed that they received a tip that the woman's name may have been Becca and that she may have resided from the Los Angeles County area. It was added on that she may have flown from either Los Angeles or Burbank, California to Albuquerque. Since this case has gained attention, there have been many speculations online surrounding the man and woman in the photo. There are so many questions surrounding this case, and while many are still waiting for updates, it's sadly taking a while to get a definitive answer. People have even tried reaching out, but as of now, all we are waiting for are answers. If you made it to this point in the video, I just want to thank you so much for being here. I'm just gonna keep this outro short. I know I haven't done an outro in I think the past 2 videos, so you guys definitely deserve an outro. But I hope you guys are doing well, I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves, and thank you guys for watching and being here. But yeah, I'm gonna go now. As always, thank you guys for being here, and I hope you're watching. Have a great rest of your day. But, before you leave, don't leave yet. I have to tell you something very important. I just want to let you know that I truly mean that. I truly hope... Wait for it. You. Yes, you, the person I'm pointing at right now. You. I just want to let you know that I truly mean that, and I truly hope you do have a great rest of your day. Alright, I'm gonna go now for real, but as always, hope you guys are doing well, hope you guys are taking care of yourselves, and I'll see you all real soon. Goodbye for now.